Welcome everyone back to another episode of Barbells to Babies. I am joined by a repeated guest because she is back by popular demand, and it's just the ladies today. So I have got the beautiful Sami Rose with me. Hello.
Huh?
We're back. Number 3? Is it number 3?
Yeah, I think so. It's been so long though. I can't even remember the last one.
Well, I mean, we did stop the podcast for like a year, so that didn't help.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't a you problem. That was an us problem. But no, it's the third time you coming on, and we've had such a resoundingly positive response whenever we've had you on. And my clients in particular have loved it. And, you know, selfishly, I want them to gain resources. So I absolutely love that. And Sami, if you don't know who Sami is, then go and follow at Sami Rose, Sami. Sami is a counselor, but she in the past was more of a personal trainer as well, online coach, ex-bodybuilder, that side of things, has come from a real background in, you know, eating disordered or disordered habits, you know, obsession with gym and training, to now really being an advocate for women in the body image space and just self-love and nourishment, and now is a qualified counselor in these areas, which is absolutely epic, and also a kick trainer, which is really, really cool. So you have been doing so much lately. So thank you for coming on. And yeah, if you had to summarize yourself or what you do in a couple of sentences, what is it?
Oh gosh. What I do in general, I guess mostly, is like help women create a better relationship with food and their body and themselves. So as much as I have moved from like PT and coaching into the counseling space, I do still have quite a sort of health and fitness focus to a lot of my work, because a lot of people that come to me come from a background of extreme dieting or having a bad coach or a bad experience with competing, and kind of come to me to just create a bit more balance. But I also do a lot of broader counseling and stuff as well. I do a little bit of grief and self-development and lots of different things, which is fun because it keeps my job really exciting and different every single day. I don't even know how to summarize myself. There was like so many things you just rattled off. I was like, shit, I've done a lot of things.
Yeah, then the ADHD brain's like, which one do we hone in on? So in terms of, I guess, obviously the type of women that come to you, what are kind of the big rocks that they're coming in with that they're really struggling with, or the emotions that they're tackling?
I would say largely, whether it's food stuff, whether it's body stuff, whether it's broader counseling concerns, ultimately a lot of the time it's like an undercurrent of the narrative of I'm not good enough. Not good enough in how I look, or I'm not good enough in that I'm not doing enough in my life. I'm not where my friends are in life. And a lot of that is just a comparison to other people. And it's wild to me how that is the theme of almost every single session I do ever. It just manifests in so many different ways, but it's really common for anyone of any body size, of any level of whatever. Almost everyone at some point feels not good enough with something.
It's like severe imposter syndrome and lack of self-worth. And diving into that, even though today we're going to be talking mostly around body image, but it's all relative, right? Like a lot of the body image stuff is because the feeling of lack of worthiness, or feeling like they should be looking a certain way, or why is this so hard for me, or, you know, such an emphasis on it. So when people come to you with that, I guess, lack of self-worth, what do you feel like are some of the big triggers? Like, do you think it's societal? Do you think it's upbringing? Like, do you feel like it's shifted? Is it a certain demographic or age bracket?
I think it definitely varies person to person, but most often it comes from a few different factors. It's pretty rare that it's like just one thing. I think general sort of societal pressures is a really big one, especially when it comes to body image. Just the notion of like thinner is better, and how that's being perpetuated in media and magazines. And, you know, growing up, you know, people around you and I, our age, in our 30s, we had every magazine in the supermarket aisle as we were checking out that was like best and worst bodies, and this is a disgusting beach body.
So you're like, oh.
Yeah, and that was just drilled into us from such a young age.
Millennials, yep.
Yeah, and it was very no bullshit about it in the worst way. Like, they were just like, this is an ugly body and we're going to tell you about it. And it was just like, the fuck?
Yeah. It's not a,
And so I think from that perspective, a lot of us just had that narrative of that really bad things can happen if your body is not good enough. You will be embarrassed and mocked and on a magazine cover. Like, of course, then everyday people think, well, geez, if celebrities who are beautiful and famous and rich still have this awful treatment if their body's not good enough, then what must people think about me and what do the people around me think? And that's where then the narrative, which often starts as a societal thing, we then get this like confirmation bias again, where we're like cherry picking what we kind of listen to from other people. And we think with this negativity bias, we will kind of look for the things that confirm what we're already thinking about ourselves and honing in on those negatives. And, oh, this person said this thing one time, or my mum made a comment about how I looked in my whatever. Um, and I think we grasp onto that. So a lot of the time it will start as one thing, but it will then just be an accumulation of lots of different situations in life. Maybe it's that you have a boyfriend in high school that makes a comment about your body and you just don't forget it.
yeah. It's funny how our brains, do you know why, from like a neuroscience or cognitive perspective, why we grasp onto the negative more than the positive?
I don't know the answer, but I just know that it's a thing that
Mm.
humans do it. I mean, I think to some degree it's a survival
Yeah,
instinct,
that's what I've read before. It's like a
to
fight or
kind of,
flight. Yeah.
yeah, and to just preempt a bad situation and kind of
And tell you
scan
not
for
to
it.
do it again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. To look out for potential threats, because I know that that's a really common thing with those in a more anxious headspace. We kind of look for the things that could go wrong to go,
Yeah.
I'm going to prepare myself for those things that could go wrong. I'm going to brace myself, or it's not going to catch me unaware. Then we spend a lot more time thinking about the negatives than we even need to, because a lot of the time those things don't even happen.
Yeah, exactly. And do you feel like social media in today's day and age is so readily available? Like back in the day for us, it was, yeah, magazines or TV shows or like actors. You'd always be like, I want to look like that actress. Or like for me, it was like, you know, that Kate Moss thin era was definitely like a trigger for my eating disorder when I was 16. Or, you know, Friends, everyone wanted to look like Jennifer Aniston and the perky boobs and the low body fat. So do you feel like it's, and this is just your personal opinion, like better or worse than back then?
I like to think that it's better,
Mm.
in that, yes, we have more access to things at our fingertips. I think if there is bad information, it can spread a lot quicker and we can compare ourselves more to more people, more everyday people instead of just celebrities. But I do think that things are shifting, especially in the last few years where diet
Mm.
culture is obviously still very prevalent, but not as in your face as it used to be. You know, celebrities aren't talking about it as much, and there's often pushback when they do, right? So there's a
Yeah.
little bit more of a two-sided conversation, especially in that when there would be, say, like a celebrity, what I eat in a day in a magazine, 10, 15 years ago, we would go, okay, that's Bible. That's what I do. I follow that. And there was like rarely any commentary around that. It was just, here's the thing, and you read it and you take it on board. Whereas now, it's less likely for that stuff to be posted. I'm not saying never, but like at least I'm not seeing it as much. Maybe that's just my curation of my feeds and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but I will often see that there is a lot of kickback when there is something that is super diet culture focused, where there will be commentary. There'll be people talking in the comment section or
Yeah.
posting a TikTok about it, discussing like, oh my God, that's insane. Please don't follow that. So I think that the conversation has begun to shift in a really positive way. So
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see how people of a more formative age group feel about it, because I guess I'm also older and wiser. So when I look at this, I take things with a grain of salt. I
And you're
notice the positive
educated.
improvements.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas I wonder if people in their teens and early 20s who are really impressionable maybe feel the exact same way that we did when we were that age.
Yeah, and I think what you said before about your curated feed is key here as well, because
Mhm.
I know, for example, like if I'm, let's say, for example, I still love following bodybuilding from like a sport perspective. So I'll still follow my favorite bikini pros, and I like seeing it because I can appreciate it from that, and I can
Mhm.
remove the, oh my God, I want to look like this from it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so sometimes when it's like Olympia and I'm like stalking all the bikini girls just to see what's up, my whole feed will become curated with shredded, lean, amazing top 1% of physiques in the world from like an aesthetic perspective for people
Mhm.
that like that look, right? Not everyone likes that look. I get that too.
Mhm.
But what I'm trying to say is that around that time, that's my feed. But then a lot
Yeah.
of the other time of the year when I'm, you know, in a different headspace or looking at different things or researching stuff for work or just following my mates, it's going to be a different feed. So then, of course, then I'm going to, you know, if I wasn't in a good headspace with my body, compare myself to that versus what's normal. So I think that curation of feed is important for like your own headspace if you're going to go on your social media every day and like
Yeah.
have a scroll through. Do you talk to your clients, your counseling clients in body image about that, about their environment or how to improve things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was one of the things as well personally that made the biggest difference to me when I was getting out of bodybuilding and going through my weight gain journey and trying to figure my shit out. I had to do a really big cull and unfollowed people that I followed just for the aesthetic, where there was just so many fitness influencers and things that just posted what I eat in a day and ab selfies and things like that, which is fine. Like everyone's allowed to post whatever they want. Um, but I was finding that it was just making me feel not good in comparison, and I couldn't take inspiration from it. It wasn't helpful to me in any way. So I was like, I need to let this go. And I really worked on following a more diverse range of bodies, more people who still post fitness content, but look all kinds of different ways and have all of these different abilities to, I guess, demonstrate like anyone and anybody can be fit and healthy. Anyone and anybody can be popular on social media or can be happy or can wear a bikini at the beach and be smiling in their photos. And that was such a really helpful thing to me that I do definitely try and impart on my counseling clients is like, cool, what are we surrounding ourselves with? And look, it's not always in your control what other people post or for you page on TikTok is like not as like you can't avoid things sometimes. Um, but at least of who you're choosing to follow, making sure that there is a little bit more of a range. If you notice that that's a problem for you, if you notice that you're just getting on and being like, I wish I looked like that. Now I feel like shit. Oh my gosh, I need to change myself to look like that. Because I think that sometimes we get fixated around like what kind of body it is that we're aiming for, what kind of look it is that we like. And we then think like, I need that to be happy. And I need that to be popular or to be liked or to be accepted, or I won't feel good enough. Like that's it. That's like the holy grail up on a pedestal. Um, but so often it's like you don't need that body to feel a particular way necessarily. You can be fitter or stronger or healthier or be in a happy relationship or feel great in your body and whatever body you're in. Like you don't have to look that particular way. So seeing lots of different shapes and sizes and skin colors displaying the behaviors that you want to embody or the feelings that you want to embody, I think that's what's really powerful. To go, it doesn't actually look one way, it looks all these kinds of ways. So maybe it can look like me.
Yeah, which, like you said before, is a good thing with how social media is swinging. That you can see that more because, yeah, back in the day, the only standard was like skinny. Like it wasn't about even like shape or curve or like anything. It was like just this stick thing. Look, and it was funny because I was having a bit of a rough body image day the other day. I think I was like premenstrual, you know, and I'm pretty good with my body image now. But look, and that's a question I was going to ask you in a sec. Like we all have our days, right? And it was just like my pants are feeling a bit tight. It was like, you know, all of those things. And I was going to the beach with my kids. And I think I'd been on Instagram looking at stuff for work. I normally do a bit of a scroll for like ideas and inspo for content, and I'd seen a lot of fitness physiques because that's a lot of what's in my feed when I'm looking for content. And I was feeling a bit down about myself. And then I went to the beach with my kids and was a little bit uncomfortable in bathers. But I'm like, as a parent, it's probably one of the best things for my body image having kids because you just got to rip the Band-Aid off. If your kids want to go to the beach, you get in a bikini. And I was down there and I remember looking around and I was looking at bodies, not from a judgmental perspective, but I was like, holy fuck, my reality is very warped because I'm in fantastic shape. I'm fit, healthy, and maybe I'm not where I want to be, but my reality on social media right now doesn't actually align with 90% of the females on this beach or the people, not to put those people down. But does that make sense? Like it kind of shook me back to reality.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think a lot of the time social media exists in a vacuum, and we can curate it to just look one particular way if we really wanted to, but that's not helpful. It doesn't have the perspective. And like in terms of what you're describing, it's not necessarily about anyone else. It's about like how fixated you were just on yourself and looking out and going, all of these different people are like having a great time at the beach.
Yeah.
And why do I care about my little flaws and imperfections? Like anyone in any size can have body image issues. Like just because you are fit and whatever, like doesn't exclude you from that.
Yeah.
But to go like, oh, like I was so worried about like people would look at me or I wouldn't have a good time or whatever. And you see all these other people not giving a fuck and just having a good time. I think that that can be actually really freeing. Like that's a good positive comparison, I guess, that we can make to go, oh,
Yeah.
I can get the fuck out of my own head.
Yeah. And you know what the funny thing was before we went to the beach? It was because my daughter said something, who is 4, and she said to me, "Mummy, why do you have a soft tummy?" And that was like oh my God, how do I like have this conversation? And obviously because she's seen me leaner and
Mm.
seen me now being a little bit softer, and I had to say to her, bodies come in different shapes and sizes. And,
Mm.
mummy's also about to get her period. And when we have a uterus as a female, and now my 4-year-old knows what a period is. We had a big chat about it. But it was interesting that she wasn't saying that in a negative way at all. She was simply saying, mummy's tummy is a little bit soft, like not in a bad way.
Yeah, just different.
But we perceive that as so negative. So my question would be, what are some good strategies, obviously different with a 4-year-old child, but what is some good strategy you give to clients if they get comments that maybe someone doesn't mean for them to be mean or intentional, but they make comments about their body? How do you encourage your clients to deal with those situations?
It's a really tough one because that comes into like, how do we control someone else's behavior?
Yeah.
Essentially. So it kind of depends on the context. Like it's a little bit of a hard question to answer,
Let's
but
say
I
like
would
a
say
family member, like say you're at a
yeah.
family lunch and
Mhm.
the uncle comes in and he hasn't seen you in a few months and he's like, "Oh, Alice, you're looking bulky, you're looking a little
Yeah.
strong." And you're like, "Is that a compliment? Is it not?" Like, I'm not sure.
Mm.
And then you go home and question your own self-worth because of a comment of someone. So what are is there any mindset work around that or reflection that you can do?
Yeah, I mean, I think starting with setting healthy boundaries around those conversations is really important. Obviously, that's not always achievable. Sometimes people don't respect that boundary, but like that's okay for you to put in place. Like if I was somewhere where I knew like this one potential person was like often making comments, I could either have a conversation with them and say, hey, I don't want my body or my food or whatever commented on anymore. If you continue to do that, I'm going to leave the room or I'm not going to be spending time with you. Like, have some form of like a repercussion off the back of that so that it's not just saying you're not allowed to say that. It's like, it's your choice whether you say it or not. But if you want access to me, if you want me to spend time with you and come and visit you or whatever, this needs to be taken off the table. Um, that's one option, but like I said, not always workable depending on the person. You also can just like change the subject or push
Yeah.
back in the moment. If it comes up, you can just not acknowledge it, walk away, go do something else, or say, I don't really feel comfortable talking about my body, and then change the subject. Um, Something I often give to my clients if they are going to, yeah, like a family event or something that haven't seen people for a while, maybe they're worried because their body's changed and they know someone's going to say something, is to come in with something else to talk about, right? So if someone's like, oh, you've gained weight, totally skim over that and go, hey, did I tell you that I have signed up to do a marathon or I just got a pay rise or whatever, and to just totally steamroll it with something else and make it not about your body. That takes a lot of self-control though, to like not feed into that or not let that rattle you. This is just about how we can change our surrounding environments, but there is also, yes, some work to be done on your own, and maybe you want to excuse yourself at a time that you can and just kind of sit and process and go, you know what, sometimes people are just assholes and just don't care that they hurt our feelings. Sometimes people have really old, antiquated headspaces, and
Yeah.
that was totally normal for them, like especially on a generational level, people of
Sure. Yeah.
my parents' level, but mostly like grandparents' level, like
Mm.
they just said some batshit crazy things. And it was totally normal. And that was just how they were raised. And maybe they're not as like up the times. But they often don't mean it as
Yeah.
mean as it comes
Yeah.
out. So kind of being able to take a step back and go, you know what, like it feels personal and that was absolutely a dig, but also if I can't set that boundary, if I can't change it, I can at least not let it permeate me as much, not take it on, because that's just a really old school headspace. And like, if they're thinking those things about me, also like, what else are they thinking about themselves? Because they
Yeah.
clearly have that really wacky viewpoint. And that's the case most of the time. Like if we think about people who are critical of other people's bodies, it's very
Yeah.
rarely someone in a good place with their own body and a healthy relationship with food and all that stuff. It's mostly someone who also has their own insecurities and tends to project, because if you look at one person like that, you tend to look at everyone, including yourself, like that too.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're a 4-year-old, then you just don't know what's going on. Chance for me to educate. That's what I say.
Yeah.
I'm like, sometimes it's an opportunity to educate. Sometimes you'd be banging your head against a brick wall if you bothered. So you kind of know. And I find as well, sometimes if people comment on it and they say, maybe you can tell they're focused on their nutrition and they're maybe a little bit more overweight and trying to lose weight, and then they're commenting on yours, maybe it's because they do want to understand how you've become maybe more comfortable with your body image, or how you've gotten to that place. So I almost sometimes I ask a question back a lot of the time. So I'll be like, oh, I didn't know that affected you. Like, why is that interesting for you? Like, that's a good question to ask back. Why does that interest you? Like what my weight's doing. And like,
Yeah.
not in an attacking way, but in a genuine curiosity. Be super curious. Just be like,
Yeah.
I just find that interesting that you're commenting on my weight. Like, let me know, like, how's that show up for you in your life? Like,
Yeah.
and it can be a good way to flip it without being so like defensive and like angry, where they kind of have to sit with it and then they get uncomfortable and it's like, oh, the tables have turned. And then you kind of get up and mic drop and walk out the room and let them sit with it for a second and then come back in.
Love that. I love that so much.
Yeah, because again, sometimes, like I said, it's not a you problem, it's a them problem 90% of the time. So yeah, it's very interesting. Okay, so getting back to body image, obviously it's something that a lot of women struggle with, like we've said, comparison, all of those variables. What are some, I guess, actionable steps that you then do with clients when, and I know this is very broad, but let's say, for example, we have someone coming in and a case study is probably better, and they come to you and they're like, Sami, I just feel like I've got no self-worth. I compare myself to everybody. I'm never going to be good enough in my business, in my body, anything. And they're at that place where they don't even want to date. They don't want to be around people. Where would be like the big bones of getting started with someone feeling that low about themselves?
The first place I like to start is actually taking your body out of the conversation a little bit and just focusing on who you are as a person. Because coming back to that undercurrent of like, I'm not good enough, that's usually what we think in wanting to change our body. It's, if I change my body, maybe I'll feel good enough, maybe I'll feel accepted. And starting with, what are the things that you already have that make you lovable and accepted and worthy and all of those things, can say, all right, I've been focusing on like this one particular thing, hinging everything and all of my happiness on like my dream body. But what if 80 or 90 or even 100% of those feelings can exist in where I'm at now? Let's start there and at least work on appreciating who you are, even if it's while working towards the body that you want. Like, I'm not against people changing their bodies if they want to. I just don't like when they think that they have to. So that's where I'll do something like one of my favorite strategies that I tell people about all the time is a list of things that you like about yourself. So writing 10 to 20, ideally like the more the better, things that are like personality traits, qualities, skills, even once-off achievements, things that you're like fucking stoked about and still proud of, put them on the list. And when you're having a particularly bad body image day or moment, you put your jeans on, you're like, oh my God, my jeans don't fit anymore. And you know how it sometimes just like sticks with you, to come back to that list of things you like about yourself and try and sit with some of the memories linked to that. So if you had on the list, I'm really funny, you would go, having a day, pull out my list. Okay, I'm going to focus on today that I'm really funny. What are some memories that I had of being funny? And if I was 10 kilos more or 10 kilos less, would that actually change my ability to be funny, or could I still be just as funny in any body shape? And 99.9% of the time, the things on that list aren't really impacted by your body. And you might think, oh, maybe I won't be as confident to do that. But that's not your body stopping you. That's your mind stopping you. You still have the ability to be that same funny person. So thinking about, a time you told a really funny joke at a dinner party, or you were like crying, laughing on a long drive home, or something like that, like sitting in that feeling and being like, you know what? I created that in whatever body I was in, and I could still do that now. And that's one of my favorite things about me. And just kind of sitting in the warmth of that can just make your body image less important. And it just says, like, okay, I can acknowledge I have a negative thought. I'm not feeling the greatest about my body, but also I can let that thought pass because that is just me not liking one tiny part of me. But here are a whole list of things that are lovable that I do really like about myself to just kind of crowd out the negative thought about your body, and it just makes it less important.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like condensing that down to such a small part of your personality, right? Like it's not your personality, it's your body image at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It might be tied a little bit to your personality if, say, yeah, you're in the fitness industry, and I hear this with coaches a lot of the time, is that I work with and mentor will say, I don't feel like I can coach people unless I look a certain way, and that's something like, what would you say to those coaches in that scenario? Because I'm sure you've probably been there at a certain point as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny to me that you say that because that used to be one of my biggest fears
Mm.
in giving up competing. I was like, well, I've built this following and I have this business off the back of me being this little tiny little shredder. Is everything going to disappear? And I actually had the opposite effect. My most successful years were like 2019 and 2020, which were
Mm.
like several years after I stopped competing. My last show was early 2017. That was like I'd gained a bunch of weight by then, but I was role modeling, just doing my thing, eating normal people food without being restrictive. I don't think I was like tracking or anything anymore at that point. If I was, it was definitely not in a restrictive, crazy way that I previously had done. And I was getting stronger and I was living an active and balanced life that also included a lot of fun. And I think that that's probably why those years were my very most successful in my fitness coaching because when I was shredded, I was attracting people who were obsessive about looking that way as well. And I didn't really feel like that was like as fulfilling work to just like get people disgustingly lean, but then like, are they having a good time, you know? Whereas when I was doing more like mindset work and like encouraging my clients to really enjoy their training and not be so pushy on like hitting their macros or whatever it was, um, they were then having a really good time. People were staying with me for longer. They were telling their friends. I was like running little challenges that weren't about like, let's get shredded in 8 weeks. It was like, let's teach you how to train and have a really good time and still be able to go out on the weekends and have a fun, night out or whatever. Um, and I think that that was really helpful, at least for me in my journey. I felt like that was much more fulfilling to help people create a really enjoyable and positive relationship with food and exercise. Um, so it's going to depend on the clients that like a coach is
You
wanting
want to
to
attract,
attract.
yeah.
But in
Mm.
general, like, yes, to some degree, like your image is somewhat of a business card when you're a coach, especially if you're advertising through social media. But don't get it twisted in that everyone wants to look like you,
Yeah.
because most of the time they actually don't. Most of the time, people just want to lose a little bit of weight, get into training, feel healthier. They don't need you to have six-pack abs to do that. In fact, you're probably alienating more people because sometimes that can be really intimidating. So, yeah, I had the fortunate experience of me actually growing more and having more success as I gained a bunch of weight. Like, I think by then I probably would have gained 15 to 20 kilos
Yeah.
on my smallest weight. And I was killing it. And I also didn't hate myself. And I think that that was coming through. And I had more energy for my coaching as
I
well.
was
Like
going
I
to say that.
actually was
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
cranky all
Had
the
a
time.
had a brain. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what people forget. Like if someone's in the depths of a contest prep, they're going to struggle to show up and be like the tip top amazing coach that they can be. There's not a lot of people that can have that, not affect it to like a very small degree. Like I feel like I'm pretty good at like separating, like if I have a bad night's sleep with my kids or whatever from like work. But I know for like when I was younger competing in my 20s, it would roll in.
Mm. Yeah. I
Oh,
think I
lost
think
you
we
again.
all
Okay,
oh,
we're back.
you go.
Yeah, we're back. Yeah.
Cool. I forgot what the
Yeah.
question was.
Yeah, so I was just saying, yeah, it definitely, it's hard to separate. And the funny thing was, last year when I competed, was it last year? No, God, it wasn't even last year. Last year was 2022 when I competed. I keep saying last year because it feels like we're not in a new year. But
Yeah.
when I competed, I didn't put up much of that on social media, and I did that strategically from a business perspective. I did that because most of my audience these days is mums and business owners and people who have other things going on than living in the gym all day, every day. And I don't coach a lot of prep athletes anymore. And I found that when I put that content up where I was a lot leaner, I'd lose followers, number one, and it would be a little bit intimidating. And it's hard because I think as a coach as well, people want to follow your journey and they want to cheer for you, but it's that fine line of not ramming it into people's faces if that's not the clientele you want to attract. So and it's been funny because I've been thinking about maybe doing one more show and then completely hang up the heels, and I'm a bit like, oh, how's that going to affect the business? Like, but then it's also important to go after your goals. So I think it's about separating the two. Like, you're allowed to have your personal goals as a coach, and that doesn't need to be your whole personality on your social media. Like, that doesn't need to be, like, you can still post really educational content and be shredded. You don't have to actually put up selfies and show your body image. And that's okay as well. And I didn't put up many progress photos when I was competing last year for that reason. It was like, it's not relevant to like me standing there 6 weeks out, 4 weeks out. Like, you know what I mean? It's not, it's not correlated. So what would be then, going back into obviously body image? So I have with clients all the time, and let's talk about more acute strategies. So let's say, for example, you're just having one of those bad body image days. So we obviously said writing down the list of like 10, 20 things that you love about yourself. I'll sometimes encourage clients, if they're stuck, to ask their loved ones what they love about them as well, if they're feeling like a really, really bad day. What are some other actionable ones to kind of change that headspace?
I think journaling can be really helpful, but that can be done in so many different ways. Like, if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm not a journal girly, I don't sit and write, that's cool. Voice memo to yourself. Put your phone down on voice memo and walk around and rant, and just try and get to the root understanding of where it's coming from, right? What is it about this body image day that's sticking with you? And a lot of the time, like, how you look is a part of it, but it's not actually the worst part of it when we think about the repercussions of that. Often, for example, it's, I'm not feeling good about my body today, and I'm nervous because I'm like going to an event tonight and I'm shy and I'm worried that people are going to think badly of me. Okay, so you're just worried about not putting your best foot forward. What else can you do then to say, okay, my body's not the most important thing? Do I need to message someone that I know is going and be like, hey, can I hang with you and feel a little bit more comfortable? Or do I need to change my outfit to make sure that I'm like not strapped into something super fucking tight and uncomfortable, and I actually just want to be able to go boogie on the dance floor? It could be, and this is one that comes up often, I've had this conversation a few times with clients just this week, around what does a bigger or imperfect body represent for you? And a lot of the time they tie it to a feeling of laziness or having let themselves go, right? And we know that that's not inherently the case as to why people have gained weight, but a lot of the time that's the association that you may have. And if you look at yourself and you've gained 5 kilos over the Christmas break, a lot of the time it's, I've been shit. I haven't been looking after myself. I feel lazy. I feel like a sloth or a blob or whatever mean things we say to ourselves. And so one of the best ways then to counteract that is to go, okay, I'm looking at a representation of that I haven't felt like my best self. I haven't spent that quality time with me and invested into moving my body and all of those good things. So you can jump straight to doing those things. And the more that you just go, okay, I don't have to do anything crazy. I don't have to go on a diet because I don't like how I look. But if I'm upset by that I haven't been honoring the promises I made to myself, then I'm going to start there, and I'm going to just drink some water today and go for a walk. And again, like, not do anything crazy and counteractive, but just to focus on like, what are the things that represent me taking good care of myself, so that even if I'm in a body that I'm not like super loving how it looks, like, it's much harder to hate a body that you're taking really good care of.
Absolutely. And I think as well, like, so as I get my clients to reflect on, well, did you have a good time? Like you went on to Europe for 6 weeks and you didn't gain weight, were you eating? Like, you know what I mean? It's like you can kind of like have a little bit of fun with it as well, in the sense of like that's more important. If you come back and you put on a few kilos, I call them those fun kilos of fluctuation with my lifestyle clients. I'm like, if you ain't fluctuating, you ain't living. Like, that's a good way to put it.
Honestly, like truly no one really gives a fuck.
No.
No one really cares as much as we think they do about our body, but it's always about, what does that mean to me? What am I fearful of as a repercussion? Is it that I've been bigger before and I wasn't treated well and that's why I have a fear around that? Okay, well, that person that bullied me, are they still even in my life? And is that something that I encounter every day walking down the street, or am I just projecting one shitty experience and telling myself then, like, no, I have to be thin to avoid that bad experience again? Like, that's not necessarily the case. So there's often something more to it. And that's why I think that just kind of journaling, reflecting, talking to yourself, venting to a friend, and just being like, I'm not feeling good about where my body is today. Why do I think that is? Is there something that I'm worried about off the back of that? And let's focus on that thing. How can I get through that thing and feel less fearful of it, or have a solution for it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you said as well, having that coming from a place of health a little bit more as well can be really, really key. And I was having that chat with a client this morning that had a stressful week of work, sent me a voice message, bit of a dump this morning on me, and like in a fine way, like, I want her to reach out. And she just said, oh, I feel, sluggish and a bit slobby. I ate a block of chocolate yesterday. I had a bad day at work. And she just like, I just got back from holidays. I thought I was going to crush it. And I was like, well, you're overwhelmed, you're stressed, this or that. And I said, like, reflect instead on how you want to feel. So if you do, like, she's a big boss in her business, and I said, well, if you want energy to show up and be the boss that you want to be, then let's focus your food habits around giving you energy, rather than like, I need to stop eating chocolate. It's like, I can have that in moderation, I can have a bit of that, but I need to make sure that meal prior maybe has some nutrients in it to get me through my meeting, so I'm not relying on caffeine and chocolate all day. And that's going to stem into, satiating more hunger, and then your portion control is going to be improved, and all of these things. And instead of having the angle of like, oh my God, yes, the scales have jumped up 1.5 kilos, let's get that off you. Like, that's not where we want to be. So I definitely think having a health focus, being reflective, like Sami said, journaling or voice memming, talking to a friend, whatever it has to be, without like fully dumping, but just expressing like how you feel. Okay, those are awesome. What about any in terms of like, do you encourage any change of state, environmental stuff, like anything that are like quick fire ones you can do too?
Oh gosh. I don't even know. I mean, I think just focusing on like what positives you can get out of the day is really helpful, like to not get stuck in the negative body image thing. So like another thing that I often use that list for is, instead of retrospectively going back over it, thinking of memories, asking that question, if I was 10 kilos more or less, how would that change? You also can pick something from the list and try and amplify it, right? So that's another thing that I will give to clients and say, cool, like if you're funny, let's focus on that today, right? Let's just push that thought out of your head and just externalize it and go, you know what? I'm noticing I'm having a bad body image thought, but I know like they will always pass, and therefore I'm going to put my energy into being really funny, or really maybe like kindness is a really big one for you, that you're like, I pride myself on being a really kind and thoughtful person. Okay. On your way to work, after trying on your work pants that are a bit too tight and you're not feeling good about it, can you pick up some flowers for a workmate that is like going through a hard time? Can you pay for someone else's coffee in the line behind you? Can you make an effort to compliment 3 people on your way into the office? Whatever it may be, I think just really trying to amplify those things is going to counteract that negativity bias that we have, and start looking for the positives in yourself. And again, it just crowds out the negative thoughts. Because for me, I'm of the belief that like, I don't know that many of us will get to a point where we have absolutely zero negative thoughts about our body. I think it's a really hard world to imagine that that's possible in, and I'm sure for some people, absolutely. But even for myself, like I've done so much work on loving myself as I am, and I will still have a bad body image day here and there. I don't let it roll into like this whole day and hating myself and changing anything about it. But I'll definitely have moments where I'm like, I don't fit into my favorite jeans, and I'm not feeling great about that, mostly because I just love those jeans. But I don't get stuck there, because I just focus on, okay, like me not fitting into my jeans today has no impact on how I'm going to help my clients. It does not mean I'm going to instantly lose my social media following, or I'm not going to die alone with cats just because my jeans don't fit. Like it's actually not that impactful. And how can I focus on all of the things that I really like today? So what can I do that makes me feel really good that I can get to the end of the day and go, okay, my jeans didn't fit, but this, and this went really well.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so impactful is not sitting in it. And I always talk to clients about not sitting in your shit. Like don't sit in the negative thought for so long that it like ruins your day or ruins your
Hmm.
week. Like it's not worth that much of your emotion, time, energy. It's like having a bad breakup, right? It's like you don't want to just sit there thinking about it all day because you're going to feel even worse about the situation
Hmm.
rather than maybe going out with your mates and having a cocktail or doing something fun, like you said. So I think also like when you're on your deathbed, sounds really morbid, but not a lot of the time, like I don't know, I don't want to be remembered for, oh, there was Alice Round, she had a great body. Like that's not what I want to be remembered for, you know what I mean? It's like I want to be remembered for, there's Alice Round, she was an amazing mum and friend
Yeah.
and business owner and whatever it may have been, a good person. So like think about that day to day a little bit more of like who is the person that I want to be, and my body image is such a small percentage of that. Like obviously, especially if you're not in the health and fitness industry, obviously if you are in it, yeah, it's a little bit of it. But yeah, I think it's being reflective on, does that really matter? Like I've been having that this week. Like I said, you all
Hmm.
have it. But again, for me, back in the day when I had my ED, I would hone in on it all day and that my day would be ruined. Like I wouldn't want to go out in public, blah, blah, blah. Whereas yesterday, yeah, I was having a little bit of a rough body image day and I went to the beach with my kids. I took them to a park. I had ice cream with them, like, and still got on with my day. And my husband got home late and from work, and he said to me, "How was your day with the kids?" And I was like, "Fucking awesome! Like, we had a great day." And I didn't think about my body image at one point when I was out with my kids in those environments because you're so focused on having fun and having a good time, and it's such a small percentage of your day. And when I put my kids to bed at night, I say, "How was your day?" They'll go, "It was so much fun. I had the best day." Do you think they ever go, "Oh, mummy was looking a bit chubby today"? Like, no,
Yeah.
yeah, like it's not. It's really not worth a thought. Yeah,
Yeah. I think even just like what you said about being on your deathbed, like even just what I want to remember about my life. I'm not going to give a shit what I weighed in freaking January 2024. Like, I'm not going to care about that. I'm going to be like, what did I do with my life? And did I have fun? And when I look back on the years that I was obsessively dieting, not just my competing years, but even in the
yeah,
years before that, where I was just so like everything was put off until I had my goal body. I'm not going to book that holiday, or I'm not going to put myself out there
it's
in this way,
exhausting.
or everything revolved around dieting and the amount of, oh God, I would hate to know the amount of minutes that I spent on my fitness pal. I'm very glad that there's not like a Spotify wrapped version of that, because like that would be horrifying of how much time I used to spend doing that. And like not
Yeah,
to say that like counting calories is inherently the worst thing in the planet, but for me, how much it consumed me,
yeah,
like, oh my God, I could have been doing so many more things with my life. And
yeah.
I'm at least glad that I'm kind of out of that now and just focused on living my life, and however I look as a result of that is fine by me, because I know I take care of myself as best I'm able to. I could be thinner, but also I don't think that I would be any happier. And I honestly don't think I'd be necessarily any healthier, because I don't have any health implications of being the weight that I am now. And I eat vegetables and I exercise regularly. I'm going to run a fucking marathon this year. Like, I'm fine. Changing my body would just change how I feel about my body. But I also can just feel fine about my body now. Um, but I do feel really good about my life when I compare where I'm at now to where I was, 5, 6,
Oh, yeah.
7 years ago. And there's a lot more life in life for me now.
Absolutely. There's a lot less like anxiety around it and what am I going to wear? What are they going to think? What am I going to do? Oh, I can't go to that. I've got to wear a bikini, or I've got to, X or Y. They can't control the food there. I can't go out to dinner. Like all of this stuff is exhausting. So absolutely. And I think this is like my last question and kind of thing to go into is then obviously as a health professional myself, obviously I have clients who count their macros, who do some of these things for a period of time. Again, I'm trying to encourage my clients to use it as an educational tool that we try to
Yeah.
transition away from, or we get to a place where it's really comfortable. And that's a topic I have a lot with my clients lately, and I've probably got better with having it the last 2 years, where I actually say to them, how is tracking feeling for you at the moment?
Yeah.
And they'll often say to me, "Oh, thanks for bringing that up. I actually am a bit burnt out with it. I didn't know that was a conversation we could have." And I'm like, absolutely. absolutely. Like, let's now just not track weekends. Let's now, and we slowly make those transitions.
Perfect.
It's not something you should be doing forever, but the topic has to come up of like, how is it feeling? Because otherwise a client might think, well, that's the only way that Alice does things. And it's like, no, it's just a tool that we're using. So my next question would be, when you say are more maybe unhealthy, maybe your bloods have come back and they're not great, and you've got high cholesterol and you've got X and Y, and you are carrying a fair bit of body fat and you want to lose a little bit of weight, but you're also nervous about your body image and your relationship to it, how do you kind of separate those two to a certain extent? Like, I know you'd have clients that are like, I want to lose weight, but should they be losing it if their body image isn't great? What are your thoughts?
It's definitely going to be a case by case thing. So I don't know if I can answer as like a broad thing, but in general, like the way that I would tackle it with most clients is to say, like, that's okay if you want to make changes to your body or whatever. We can still focus on the mindset side of things and appreciating where you're at. But let's start with the healthy behaviors and just take health promoting action. And if you naturally lose weight as a result of that, then that's just a byproduct that can be a happy little bonus for you. But at the end of the day, if you are mostly concerned about your health, then let's focus on the health. Because if you jump straight to the just losing weight part, it isn't always about health. You know, if you think about, especially for me, when I was pump prepping, I didn't eat the healthiest. I ate a chemical shitstorm of sweeteners and fake foods and those fucking noodles. You know, they stunk like fish and they're like 10 calories. Disgusting. Slim pasta. Oh, disgusting.
Yeah, I put up a reel about that the other day. Like, what are the like foods you never ever eat ever again?
Oh, the cognac, the smell, and they were like rubber.
And zucchini oats, cognac noodles.
Yeah, so many of those things were just gross. And like that, I don't think that made my insides very healthy. Like, I had some gut issues off the back of just how many sweeteners and things I've added to everything to make my food not bland. Whereas, you know, if people are wanting to focus on health, okay, like, let's get you moving a little bit more without it being crazy every single day. Let's get you eating better by understanding what foods have more protein and more fiber. And like, that's the instance where, so long as someone doesn't have a disordered history with food or with tracking, it can be a good educational tool on the short term, to really learn, like, oh, what has more protein and what has more fiber, and just kind of getting really curious about the foods that you're eating so that you've got that context. I think that that's a totally acceptable thing to do based on someone's history. But okay, like, let's get you eating more veggies. Let's get you focusing on your sleep. All of these things probably would promote weight loss, but we're not doing it for the sole purpose of weight loss. We're doing it because you want to look after yourself better. That's the main undercurrent, biggest theme. So where there is that sort of potentially conflicting goal around wanting to be kind to myself and not slip into bad habits, but also I do want to lose weight, what I love to stress to my clients, and obviously I'm not here to change anyone's mind, like, it's not my job to be like, you can't focus on weight loss. I would always just encourage them to make sure that weight loss isn't the number one goal, right? It can be in the mix, but let's make caring for myself, managing my mental health and looking out for any signs that I'm slipping into disordered behaviors, keeping up with therapy or setting a performance goal. All of those ideally would come before a weight loss goal. And that way it's like, cool, if I do these things and I care for myself and I happen to lose weight, wonderful, then that's what my body wants to do. But sometimes when we put weight loss as number one, we then just kind of screw with ourselves in the process. We can make ourselves less healthy, or we're more likely to take unhealthy measures. And then that doesn't really solve the initial problem of trying to be healthier, because there are tons of people in thin bodies or who have lost a dramatic amount of weight that are extremely unhealthy, and there are people in bigger bodies that are probably healthier than them, but from the outside people assume that they're less healthy. So I think that can just be, it's more about your behaviors than how you actually look. So focusing on those behaviors is the start.
Absolutely. I love that. And that's really the approach that we have with our clients is like, we say that on consults, they're like, oh, I want to lose 20 kilos. And the first thing we say is, cool, that's fine, but we're going to do it in a health first approach. So that's not going to mean losing that in 10 weeks. That's going to mean, okay, let's look at your habits. Let's look at your lifestyle first, and then let's strategize that out. So just make sure, and I don't care if you get coached by me or someone down the road, but just make sure that they have a health focused approach if you are going to a coach. And if every check-in that they send you back, all they focus on is your body image, like that's a red flag. If they're not saying great job on improving this habit or awesome work with your training consistency, and all they're going is, oh yeah, we could get you a bit leaner, or great weight loss this way, it's not bad for them to comment on it, but as long as there's other things going on in that check-in.
Yeah, that was something that I was really intent on doing when I was still coaching and doing macros like many, many years ago. But I would always make sure that my feedback in check-ins, like I didn't acknowledge weight loss, measurement changes, anything until kind of the very end of the message. I would always start with, well done on this, and love how you're doing with that, and how are you feeling with such and such, to just really drive home the importance of like, how are you feeling and what are you doing? That's what I care most about. And like, cool, like great that you're wanting to lose weight, and all right, looks like we're on the way with that, but I want to really emphasize the things that you're doing that are positive, that are taking care of yourself.
100%, because otherwise you're going to have no longevity. What happens once you hit that, say, 10 kilo weight goal you came to that coach for? You get that weight off, and then it's like, cool, they get so unmotivated, because then they go into the next phase of a reverse diet and they're like, well, the scales aren't going down. You're not celebrating my body. You're not celebrating this. And then they feel really disheartened. So, or man, they might be celebrating that the scales didn't go up much in a reverse, but that's about it. And they're not going, look, you're getting stronger. Like your weights are going up. You're progressively overloading. Like, fuck yeah, you're saying you have more energy. Like, awesome. This is why we reverse. So just being a little cautious, and even coaches listening. Like I know back in the day, I would have probably focused on people's body image too much 10 years ago when I was coaching. Like we all did it, but it's because we're more educated and we're learning more now, and we're all trying to get better. And I think that's the most important thing and message from this podcast is like, nobody's perfect. Everybody has bad body image days. Everybody has been there, say as a coach or somebody, and we're all just trying to do our best, learn, grow, get more educated, and be kinder to ourselves, really. Like that's the biggest part of it.
Yeah, for sure. I think we all could do with a dose of being nicer to ourselves, and I'm at least just really glad that like I've had such a positive experience in my like weight gain journey, and still being so embraced and still having quite a successful business. Obviously, I've taken a bit of a pivot away from, training and weight loss and all of those kinds of things, and I'm mostly focused on counseling, but it's really good to see that the people that come to me now, at least I think it's just because obviously they see that that's what I talk about, but people that come to me now wanting to take care of themselves more, not coming to me with the main focus of weight loss. Like I'm personally really enjoying just having a slightly different angle from the clients that I work with, where they're wanting to get good energy into themselves and not talk about their weight. Even like the coaching clients I've had in recent years, there's no weight or measurements or photos or anything in the check-ins. It's literally just behavior and feeling based. And that's been really lovely. So yeah, it's been a nice little change to my business off the back of my personal changes. And I guess if anyone's listening to this and struggling with that thought around like, if my body changes, I'm going to be less worthy, or I'm a trainer and people won't want to work with me if things change. Like I am evidence of that. I'm probably the most successful I've ever been. I'm doing photo shoots for very big activewear companies, and I'm part of a huge wellness app, and still doing relatively well on social media, I guess. And all of that is coming from me being like 25 plus kilos more than I used to be. And this was my biggest fear. And I'm like, the fuck was I so scared of? Like having a good time? It's the worst thing.
It's amazing. I'm so proud of you, and it's such an awesome journey to watch and be a part of. I actually probably came in like after you like kind of competed, so like it's been beautiful seeing all of this growth. And thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I'm going to wrap it up there. There's so many actionable steps. What I'm going to do is get Sami, I'll pop some links below of some of the programs and things that Sami runs, her website, counseling details. So I'll put that all in the show notes so you guys know what to do. If you enjoyed this episode, obviously go down there, jump on the links and then also give it a share. Tag me and Sami on socials as well as Barbells to Babies, the podcast. And thank you so much for coming on and your time today, Sami.
Thanks for chatting. I've missed you.
No worries. I missed you too. We need that to catch up. And I'll talk to you privately soon. See ya. Bye.